Hello, hello, and we are live yet again. I may actually lower this, so apologies. And this is my author's chat of the week. As usual, I'll be joined with my co host shortly, and we'll be talking about writing, books, publishing, fantasy, nerding out about all that fun stuff. In the meantime, while I'm waiting for him, here he is. Voice is, what are you reading today? Hello!
Hello! How the heck are you?
Good, how are you?
I am good. I am doing this TikTok live thing for the first time ever.
Fantastic.
So thank you for leading me down the path of madness. This is going to be insane.
It's all good. I have to say, I saw I don't know if this was a recent photo or not, but I did see one of your photos on one of your other platforms about either a book signing or a con of some sort. So I do
That
have some
was,
questions about that in a
yeah.
little bit.
Yes, I was very excited. I was at a Comic-Con over the weekend, and it
Ooh.
was a love-hate kind of thing. Like I love being at those things, but I hated it on Sunday because my Minnesota Vikings were playing the Buffalo Bills. So I splurged for the little NFL Plus app on my phone, and there I was at my table watching the game on my phone. Unbeknownst to me, my friends were watching me watch the game, and we're taking many pictures and having a merry old time. So yeah, it's up on Instagram. Anyone that wants to go check it out, you can see me looking super dorky and very excited, and it's adorable.
That's great. Well, how was the con outside of that clash of time?
Yeah, a lot of fun. So I'm up in the Twin Cities of Minnesota, Minneapolis, St. Paul. There's over the years there have been a lot of like big celebrity cons. There's Wizard World and there's FanX and there's Galaxy Con and all those things. Minnesota's had kind of a tough time. Wizard World dried up a little while ago. GalaxyCon rolled in, and then the pandemic happened, and they haven't come back. And there's this newish group, I guess not that new, but they're called Nerd Street. And last year they stepped up and they said, we want to do a Twin Cities con. And like the straight up celebrity con with all the comic creators and artists and authors and then some great celebs to meet and get autographs and selfies. They brought in Elijah Woods and Sean Astin.
Wow.
On Saturday, the mayor of Minneapolis declared it Middle Earth Day in Minneapolis. We
Yes.
had like a ceremony. There was like a great big proclamation event. So the con was fantastic. This group, Nerd Street, does a great job. They've really grown it, and it was a lot of fun.
Well, that's great. I recently attended my first con this past fall, earlier in the late summer, early fall. It's some in Georgia, so it was Dragon Con,
Oh
and
yeah,
yeah, so
I
that
know
was a
all
lot of
about
fun
it.
'cause I've never attended one, and I was privileged to be actually a panelist for Book Talk there, and so talking about this wonderful community for them and anybody interested in the writing side of all things nerd. But it was a fun experience. That
Yeah.
was also a little overwhelming because I didn't know what to expect.
So Dragon Con has been on my list for a few years. I had a lot of friends down there this year that all came back with great reports. So just
Well,
I'm
maybe
super
next year
jealous.
will be your year.
Yes, right.
Well, okay, since we kind of jumped the gun a little bit, how I like to at least make sure we hit our intros, because this is kind of just a collab. We kind of chit chat, and anybody who wants to chime in the meantime, viewer wise, can ask questions and go along, and we kind of interact that way. Now, with that said, I usually let my co host of the day kind of introduce yourself, what you
Cool.
write, what you're all about, and then I'll do the same because there's always new people chiming in, and then from there we can go on where the takes us.
Cool. Sweet. Yeah. So I just like launched right in because don't you all know me? I mean, come on. So hi everybody. I'm Scott Burtness. I am a horror and paranormal comedy writer. I've got a trilogy of books about three buddies in Wisconsin turning into monsters and making a mess of things. And I've got a new series about a shapeshifter whose job is to get your stuff back from your ex after a messy breakup. So I love Shaun of the Dead. I love Bruce Campbell. I love Tucker and Dale versus Evil, What We Do in the
Oh yeah.
Shadows, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, all that good stuff. So that's where I decided to spend my time writing.
Oh, that's fantastic. No, I was trying to like place. It took me a second. I was like, a comical side of horror. What? Yeah, okay.
It's a
You mentioned
thing.
a few there, and I was like, oh
It's
wait,
a
I got you now.
it's
I
a
got you
tiny
now.
little subgenre, but it's a great subgenre. So discover it. It's amazing.
Fantastic. So, with your, you said you have two different series, right?
Mhm.
Correct. One is the
The trilogy. Yep.
yeah, the trilogy. What was the name of that trilogy again?
It's called Monsters in the Midwest. So
Okay, and the
the
first book.
individual books is it's Wisconsin Vamp. It's where it all
Okay.
begins with Herbert Knudsen, a truck stop diner cook in Wisconsin who becomes a vampire and is the least sexy vampire you're ever going to meet. And then it just again goes from there. So yeah, it's a fun series.
Fun. And when did you start writing? Let me just ask the basics right now while I have your attention.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know really what date to put on the calendar. Back when I lived in Los Angeles, I was out in LA from like 2003 to 2010, give or take. I felt like I had to have a screenplay. Everybody in LA has a screenplay. Like, you know, if a cop pulls you over for speeding, they ask for your log lines. Like, it's real. And so I think, you know, if I had to kind of pinpoint it, I'd say I started writing probably around 2004, 2005. Discovered I was a terrible screenwriter, like had no clue what I was doing. So it was, I guess it was like 2010 when I started trying to adapt it into a novel, and I finally got it out in 2014.
Oh, that is fantastic. No, it's always curious to me, how people begin. When did they begin? Because some people are, I've written since the day I was born, and other people are, you know, they just began their journey yesterday. So
Right.
everything in between, I always kind of say. Um, but yeah, for anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Katharine Wibell. I am an author on the epic fantasy genre side of things. I have three different series. They range in different age brackets just because it all depends on how dark and gritty they are versus kind of how adventure forward and fun. So starting it off, I have the Jed Chronicles, which is my young adult portal fantasy. So little sci-fi undertones in that one, but it's a multiverse with 12 magical planets, filled with all sorts of mythological beast beings, creatures, and the like. And it starts with the 12 tasks and ventures on with Vigar and Sire. And the third one will release at the beginning, hopefully, of next year, as all goes as planned. So that one's a fun series. It actually was a series that inspired me to write, but I'll get into some of that potentially later. I also have my debut series, which happened to be a new adult dark shifter fantasy set in a kingdom where both humans and shapeshifters have to decide if they can put aside the differences to help each other defend the kingdom against a greater threat. And that one starts tilting my line with the blue cover right here, Sarah's Claws, and there are 4 books. It's my only complete series, and again, that's called the Incarn Saga. My third and final series, this is my spiel, I do this every weekly. My third and final series is called The Guardian Speaker. It's a Viking dark fantasy almost on the grim dark level, so it is kind of aimed at adults. They are novellas, so they're really quick reads, and I'm releasing them multiple in a year. For me, that's rapid release, but it's not really by definition, I guess. There are, or by this Friday, there will be 8 released. And that will be halfway through that series. But think of, again, Norse mythology. It's a dark retelling of it. So you're going to explore Yggdrasil, the world tree, the 9 realms, and immerse yourself in some Nordic myth. A little more obscure than what people expect when they're assuming you're going to go for the Odin and Thor
Right.
and Loki side of
Very
things.
cool.
But that's what I write.
Nice. And so I knew most of that because I've been, you know, obsessed with you online for like months and months now. So I see all your TikToks, all your IGs. It looks amazing. I just want to like hire you and have you do all of my Canva and social media.
Oh no, 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 no. Too much time. That is, see, that's what every author, well, maybe not every author, there's always going to be exceptions, but I feel a lot of authors, there's a love-hate with social media,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's,
Yep.
you enjoy aspects of it, but it's so time consuming and you kind of just want to write.
True that. No, it's true that the business side of being an author is tough. It really is.
Hmm.
It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of figuring out things that might not be really in your lane or things you even enjoy all that much. But it's just what you got to do. So
then you start throwing out terms like, what is your brand and all that stuff. But for me, it's like, for you, I have to say, every time I see your stuff pop up, you always have a humorous twist, which actually works really well
Yep.
because you write humor in, as you said, kind of horror and sci-fi and all this kind of um, different than what people expect ways. But I think that's something that kind of catches my eye when I look at your stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, I know who I'm talking to.
Well, and so for the most recent con, I got a new banner for my table. So,
Ooh.
my old banner was basically, who is this guy? It's author Scott Burtness.
Mhm.
I write paranormal comedy, paranomedy, that stuff. The new
Paranormal, I
one,
love that.
great big letters, beer, fueled, urban fantasy. Because
Hmm.
almost all of my writing gets done at the local brewery, and my characters really like to drink. So I think
I love it.
that's my brand. That's what I'm going with.
I like that. I like that. And again, it's as we said, everybody kind of wants their thing. I don't even know what my thing is at this moment in time, but there are definitely people who have like vibes where I'm like, oh, I know your thing. Oh, I can tell. And I will admit, when looking back at that picture I kind of referenced earlier, I saw that poster and it was something that was definitely eye catching.
Well, thank you.
I need you to help me work on my log lines.
Totally awesome. So I'll do your gigantic banners. You do all my TikToks. It's going to be amazing.
There you go. It's a deal. It's a deal. So let me ask you, because you started putting out work, you said 2014?
Yep. Yeah. Wisconsin Vamp was January of 2014, a freaking lifetime ago.
It does. Well, for me, like I published my first one in 2016, and it takes time to kind of get into the feel of things. And I don't know if writing is your full career
Oh
or if
no,
it's a side career.
it is.
I never say
Yeah.
hobby because, it's not really a hobby. They're passion. They may be your side jobs, but they're not really hobbies when you're a writer, I
Yeah,
feel.
no. It's kind of like it's a hobby that ends up being cheaper than golf. You sell a few
That's
books, you
true.
make some money back. It's not too bad. But yeah,
That's
no,
true.
for me, writing is totally a side hustle. It's going to be a while before I could ever even dream of walking away from the day job.
Hmm.
But yeah, I just over the years, slowly working through, kind of finding my space, figuring out what I like to write, all those things. I've just enjoyed it. I started doing conventions in 2015, so I do Comic Cons, horror cons, pop culture cons, fan cons. Love it. Just the get to meet the people and do the things. Really, really like starting my day with just cracking open the laptop, having some coffee, putting some words down, ending my day at the brewery, nice pint of beer, explore some bizarre world. Yeah, so I'm actually okay with calling it a hobby because right now for me, it really feels like it. It's something that I really enjoy doing. If it
I
actually
feel
became a
like
job, it might not be as enjoyable.
I agree to disagree with that one
All right.
because, for me it's a job, but like the parts I like are the writing. Obviously, this is as kind of we mentioned that you have to do other things that you may not like as much. For instance, you may be advertising or social media, but the writing I find super enjoyable. And
Yeah.
okay, editing is tedious, but even still, I have so much fun. As you were saying, doing the world building and meeting your characters and
Yeah.
figuring out what's happens next. That for me, it doesn't feel like a normal job, but it is a job. But it
That's pretty
doesn't feel
cool.
like a normal
So
job.
it's a full-time thing for you, huh?
I will say yes, but I also have my side hustle right now, which is pet portraiture. So I kind of bounce between. So
Get out of here.
I
You
pay pets.
okay, so we are definitely talking after this interview. I've got a little pit lab mix that I just think yes.
I love
So
it.
so people send you pictures of their pets and then you paint them and make them really pretty and cool. That is amazing. Yep. So
Yeah,
we're definitely
my
talking more.
style of art is called reverse glass painting. So I, instead of painting on a canvas, I paint on the backside of glass in a mirror image form. And so by the time it's weird, you paint in layers, mirror image, flip it around, and you voila have your hopefully your pet, which more often
Oh,
than
that is
not
so
works.
cool. That is super cool. I know the technique you're talking about. So how did I not know
Okay,
this?
good.
Oh my God. All right, cool. So yeah, here to talk about dogs. That's what we're gonna do from now on. Just that's it. We're just talking about dogs and
That's
painting. No, no. All right. So can I ask you a question?
it. Okay.
All right, so I know that you write about shifters, and my new series, the main character is a shapeshifter.
Okay.
I would love to hear a little bit about how you came up with the rules for your shapeshifter. Is it magic? Is it science? Is it something in between? So I mean, if you don't mind sharing, like, just tell me a bit about your shapeshifters. What are they? How do they work?
Well, interestingly, it's set in almost I guess you could almost say a medieval era because we're dealing with archery and swords and all that kind of stuff. So it's not urban by any means. And because of that, I don't use a lot of verbiage like genetics or anything like that. But for
Sure.
me, it would be a genetic change, uh, inherent, just biological genetic change. And because of that, my shifters can only change into one animal that they're born with.
Okay.
And if you really want to go into, because it's always interesting what an author knows behind the scenes, but it's kind of touched on in the earlier books that typically females have milder animal forms and males have a little more impressive, showier animal forms. That is due to probably the testosterone in him.
Okay.
But my main character, and that's why she's very strange, is because while most females may have, ducks, geese, a doe, a cat or whatever, she is a tiger. And so that's a very strange thing to even have a female that has, a showier animal form versus something that's male oriented in their culture. But
Okay.
again, there's more to her than just that too. We have a lot of other subplots, but when it comes to shifters, it is a genetic thing in that
That's so
series at least.
cool. Okay.
Yeah. So
And
how
so,
about you?
so I, my world is urban fantasy, humans and paranormal creatures living side by side.
Mm-hmm.
I've decided that even though there are lots of different were creatures, there's were otters and werewolves and a were llama, like all that kind of stuff. A shapeshifter is very, very rare,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not even really out there in the open. It's kind of slowly becoming apparent that August may be a little bit of a one of a kind. He has a repertoire of animals he can shift into, so he can't just shift into anything he wants. There's only a certain number of things that he can truly become. And then I did give him the ability to do what I call masking. So, like, if I wanted to try and shapeshift into you, I could look like a very crude, cheap costume store version of you, but it's not going to
Okay.
be you. It's just like pulling on a mask for a few minutes. And so, August has this limited number of animals he can shift into. No spoilers on this show, but I do start to get into explaining it in book 3, which is coming out this winter. But it's very much where when he becomes the animal, it's easiest just to be what the animal wants to be. So, if he's going to shift into a cat, he just wants to lie in the sun and knock shit off counters. And there's a little tiny speck of human awareness still in there. So there's
Okay.
there's always this fear that if he stays as the animal too long, he
Mm-hmm.
won't be able to come back.
Yeah, and that
So
one
yeah,
I do touch on that kind of concept because being an animal shifter culture, it was fun because I have some background in animal behaviors, animal psychology, and so pulling from like some of that, it was kind of fun creating, a race that even in their animal form, they have consciousness and awareness, but there is some people, some of them have been told if they're too long in their animals, there there may be a potential where you don't come back
get stuck. Yeah,
psychologically, and then when they're in the humanoid forms, they also still have some kind of bestial things as well because they're eternally blended.
sure. So
So
do you think, and I don't know how old you are, I'm not going to assume, but have you seen the movie Willow?
a long time ago, yes. Well,
Okay.
long time for me.
So, he goes in search of the witch, and
Hmm.
she is a bird, and they help transform her back to her human form. And, like, her little iconic line is she's looking at her aged skin and her gnarled hands, and she's like, "Has it been so long?" I wonder if that's what was stuck in my brain when I'm like, "Ooh, if he stays something too long, it'll be really hard to come back." I don't know. I just
Maybe.
do you ever like go spelunking through your inspiration and your characters and your worlds and try and see where some of that stuff might have come from?
Sometimes, I mean, there is always that self, analysis of the why for me, and it's been a new development that up until probably joining this particular platform, I haven't read a lot of modern fantasy, even though
Okay.
I know the rule. Everybody's like, read your genres.
Yeah.
I never really did that because I always pulled from mythology. So and that's kind of what I like to read is the source material of mythology. So
Okay.
being the weird one where I'm like, I'll read the Ramayana, I'll read the Iliad and all that kind of stuff for fun versus picking up a current
Sure. Yeah.
text. Changing that now because I do want to challenge myself to different kind of writing styles, but
Okay.
and being aware of the breadth that modern fantasy is today. But yeah, it's always interesting trying to figure out where an idea comes from and how it kind of manifests and changes. I know for me, when I was developing the shapeshifters, and I have some comments, I see some people saying hi, and I see someone else
Hi.
saying, oh, Blanca saying, love Willow. We watch it once a year, so there you go. Sorry,
Nice.
I read it out just because I will kind of try to repost this on my YouTube in a couple weeks, and so that part's not there, so that's why I kind of read
Cool.
some of those periodically. But going back to the point was, I do know that one of the things that inspired my version of the shifters was, I can't remember, the book had an odd title. I think it was called The Vampire Universe, and
Okay.
it was one of those kind of not even encyclopedia style books of all different kind of vampire like or um, creatures of the dark lore
Cool.
from around the world. And in the beginning, they had different definitions. And one of them was the term theremorph, which is a shifter of many forms, and saying that that's a category that anything that shifts, be it witches or vampires or werewolves, can all fall into
Sure.
that,
Yeah.
you know, umbrella term. But I like that term so much that my species of shifter is called theremorph. They're not called shifters, they're called theremorphs.
Cool. Which is a great word.
It is.
I I kind of had the similar thing. I had my most recent book was book 2 in this new series, and one of the characters that you meet is a living, breathing scarecrow, and I just randomly discovered that I think it's the Polish name for scarecrow is pronounced like Strachnaroble. I do not speak Polish,
Right.
so my accent is terrible. But so I didn't want it to just be like a Strachnaroble. It's the Strachnaroble. It's the actual thing that every scarecrow and stuffy guy you've ever seen is just a rough imitation of. And
Oh.
yeah, just the power of like finding the right word for what
Mm-hmm.
you want to create is huge. So yes, that is a very cool term, and I think it's a great race.
Well, kind of going with that concept. So when you come up with character names, how much, because I feel like I remember somewhere I had this conversation. I don't know if it may have been on a different platform, but the concept of how much effort do authors put into naming their characters? Because I've heard someone was saying they literally downloaded like the 100 top names in the world and they're crossing it down
Yep.
the list, and that's how they're doing it. And other people are just like, whatever pops in my head. And some people take months trying to research the perfect name for
Yeah.
whatever they're writing. So how do you come up with your names, character names?
So I'm going to say, and I will put money on this, it's probably a little easier for me than for you because all my stuff happens in modern day Midwest USA. So, like my first series, the main guy, the vampire, is Herbert Knudsen. His best friend is Dallas the ladies' man, and their third buddy is Stanley, who thinks he got abducted by aliens. So yeah, Herb, Dallas, and Stanley. Why not? And then of course one's a Knudsen, one's a Vintner. It's all up in Wisconsin. For the new book, where it gets fun in the new books is I do have a lot more creatures that just coexist with humans side by side. So, like the last book, I introduced these. They're called Coblins or Coblinow. Like goblins, it's similar. And I just basically grabbed all the tiles from the box of Scrabble and threw them on the table, and like whatever came out was the name. Like I made these really ridiculously long, funny names.
I'm so glad that someone said that. I've always hoped that someone legit did that. Scrabble name.
Well, and again, like it's kind of a nod back to the things that shape us. So like
Hmm.
every other kid, growing up, I really liked Tolkien's The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings,
Hmm.
and some of the dwarvish names or the Entish names that could go on for days. Or one of my favorite series was called The Chronicles of Thomas Covenant the Unbeliever, and the race of giants in that world believe that like the strength of a name and a story is a beautiful thing, and humans, because their lives are so short, have such short words for things, and like a giantish name could take 3 days to tell. And so it's really hard for the giants to shorten their names to something a human could actually handle. So I wanted my goblins to be kind of like that. They have these just dumb long names. When I think about naming main characters, I try not to get too hung up on like being too clever.
Hmm.
So the new series, the main character is August Shade. August, just because I like the name. Shade, just because for a while the working title of the series was going to be the Shady Shifter series. So I'm like August Shade, Shady Shifter, which already I feel like I'm getting too clever and I'm getting mad at myself. But that was about it. Like, it just, and then when I start getting into, like, if I'm exploring, Polish mythology or, Germanic
Hmm.
mythology or whatnot, I do the lists of names. Like, show me the top 100, Polish girl names and just go through
Uh-huh.
until I find one that I think sounds cool.
Oh, that's fine. I like that. I like
Yeah.
that. No, it is like you said. And also depending on your genre can take effect. But for urban fantasy, it does make sense that you can have fun with your names, but they don't have to be these ridiculous things because they're urban fantasy. You want them to be believable in a now.
Yeah, totally. So like the humans get human names, the creatures, I just try and have as much fun with it as I can, and just keep it light. So for
And you
you
said
though,
you invented your goblin-esque creatures.
yeah.
I can't remember what
So
were they called.
Coblinow
Goblin.
are a thing. So Coblins are a thing.
Okay,
They are
I actually don't
more
recognize that one.
they're more wealth mythology. They
Okay.
tend to be like smallish creatures that would work the mines, and they are as likely to hurt as to help. They're very fickle.
Hmm.
So in my world, I had emigrated them to the States because Minnesota has a lot of iron ore mines up in the northern part of the state, but also decided to make them very, very fond of Rube Goldberg-esque contraptions.
Oh,
So,
love it.
yeah, they're clever. They are not totally trustworthy. Again, very much like Fae and goblins.
Hmm.
But if there's an easy solution to a problem, never ask a goblin because they are going to spend like months and months and months coming up with the bowling ball that knocks over the domino that hits the feather that floats down the toaster and does all this random stuff just to pour a glass of milk.
I feel like, and this just popped in my head, I feel like, and I know it's going to take you a lot of time, you need to create one of these contraptions, film a video, and it ends up leading to your book series.
That, yes, actually, challenge accepted. No, challenge not accepted. Whew. Yeah, they do some pretty crazy stuff. Anyway, but yeah, so that's, I mean, half the fun of, I think, writing in the fantasy and urban fantasy space is just there's so much to explore.
Hmm.
So many cool, unusual things. And if I could write great, suspenseful action books or, criminal procedurals or, psychological thrillers, I guess I would. But if there isn't a Bigfoot somewhere in the background, is it even worth
Yeah.
it? Like, I mean, come
Well, as
on.
you mentioned, you liked Buffy, but that's kind of reminds me of the spin-off Angel
Oh, yeah.
series because they were detective-esque vibes in a urban fantasy realm.
Yep. All right, so important question. Were you yourself Team Spike or Team Angel?
Hmm. Okay. I have to think about this. I'll just say I recently rewatched it, and there's a lot of things that I like about the about Spike, but there's certain things. There was a certain couple moments in that series that I cannot swallow, and I don't know if I could ever forgive him. So I
Totally.
would say because of that, I would almost have to end up with Angel,
Team Angel.
but
But
Spike definitely had more depth, grit. Obviously the bad boy flair, and but even he may even you can argue have a little more dimension to him in the end.
yeah. Yep, I'm Team Spike.
Couldn't
I
swallow
would
some things that he did.
I would have his babies. I love that guy. Spike is amazing. So anyway,
Very good looking dude in his heyday, I will
oh
admit.
yeah, no, James was a handsome fellow. So okay, fun story. I'm at one of these big cons some years ago as a guest, not as a vendor, and
Mm-hmm.
there's James, selling his
Mm-hmm.
autographs and stuff. So I go up, pay the $40, have him autograph his picture of himself as Spike to my wife. I went
Oh,
back to the same con the next year. James is back. I paid the $20 for a selfie just so I could tell James, hey, I was here last year and I had you autograph your picture for my wife. And then she put it in a frame and put it next to her computer where she can look at you all day long. I'm nowhere in the house. You're next to her computer. And he laughs. He's like, I think I can kind of beat that. He says, my wife loves to watch True Blood. So there's this one night where we are lying in bed, our marriage bed, and I turn to her while she's watching True Blood and say, honey, there is a half-naked vampire right here. And she goes, shh, not now. So yeah, I'm Team Spike and also Team James. James is amazing.
he's great. He's great. Absolutely. So with your vampire, you said you have starts with a vampire, your trilogy, right?
Yes. Yep.
So with that one, what kind of vampire do? Because again, going through this lore, we're
Yeah.
delving into lore today, and so vampire lore ranges dramatically and is always evolving. Sometimes it evolves in ways that I just can't, just don't agree with, but it's always evolving. So what kind of vampire are you? Do you write?
Yeah. So for anyone that might actually want to pick up the book, I don't want to spoil it. So Herb does become a vampire in a pretty weird way.
Okay.
And that transformation is actually a running joke throughout the series. So the way that Herb becomes a vampire, and then in the next book, the way his buddy Dallas becomes a werewolf, and then in the third book, the way that Stanley becomes a zombie, are all very similar in their weirdness. But so I went with my vampire as being more of a like a bloodborne infection. So it's
Okay.
it's it's less of a magical mystical thing, and it's more that
Mm-hmm.
there's something actually physically different about him. And then I leaned into the sort of classic Dracula tropes, like it doesn't cast a reflection, can't stand sunlight, does not glitter. It's less glitter, more flannel in my world. But I had fun with them, So, I mean, here's this poor guy that's going to go try and impress the girl, and he can't comb his hair because he hasn't got a reflection. It's those kind of jokes throughout the whole series. So
Always
really just
wondered
trying
how
to,
that would work.
yeah,
How do you
right?
style your hair?
So I just I decided to go with the like the classic vampire stuff, and then see how well it fits some guy in rural Wisconsin that can barely match his socks, and just went with what came out.
That is fantastic. So, what is your age range that you would gear toward? Are you,
Oh yeah, I'm adult.
yeah,
I mean,
okay.
and it's not even because of the content.
Hmm.
You know, and I try to write adult content and I just blush furiously. It's horrible. Like I'm writing my book at a cafe and trying to type the word boob and like I keep turning my computer toward the cafe wall so that nobody can see me typing boob. Like it's embarrassing. But so I've got some swearing, I've got some light sexuality, but what really makes it adult is that it's a lot of humor for Gen X.
Mm,
It's not that millennials and Gen Z aren't going to enjoy it, but there's going to be some layers and some jokes and some references that just aren't going to land quite as well.
I
Like
understand.
I should probably do a refresh because there's a cute scene where I have like a Dawson's Creek joke,
Oh,
about whether the main character's love interest is into Pacey or not. I mean, whatever. So it's adult just because I'm getting old and I'm trying to speak to my people.
Okay. No, I just interesting too because not all adult literature has to be spice forward, as you would
No,
say on this
yeah,
platform. And that's
yep,
the thing is the reason why things are adult could be for me. I categorize my adult stuff because it's the level of grit and the what's going on, in the storyline. Some
sure,
people are doing it because it's spice. Some people that makes sense for you would be the humor and will it just hit or
yeah,
miss for a younger crowd. So
right,
it makes
yep.
sense. Interesting. Okay, neat. So okay, so what are some of your now? I found out there are so many sub categories and everything. And
Yes,
as you were saying,
yeah.
horror comedy or paranormal comedy. Are there any other ways you would categorize your particular work, or is that
No,
pretty much the nail on the head?
I mean, that's pretty much it. So, for folks watching that maybe are aspiring indie authors, or just want to know a bit more about how it works behind the scenes, Amazon is definitely one of the biggest platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And within Amazon, I think there are over 13,000 different categories and subcategories you could tag a book for. So you can get really, really specific in your categorization. And what makes it even more fun is that those categories are always evolving.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, even just a handful of years ago, you couldn't even get to a horror comedy category on Amazon. Didn't exist. You could do humorous dark fantasy or things like that. But these days I feel now that if you take my trilogy and put it in horror comedy, urban fantasy, but it can also go like rural and small town fantasy, dark humorous fiction, all fit pretty well. The new stuff is not really horror; it's just more straight up paranormal comedy.
I like
So
that.
that one I tend to put into just more broad humorous fiction, humorous fantasy type categories.
Because like one of the terms, and I learned it here, I don't write in this genre, but is one that seems to be starting to get some momentum going is cozy fantasy.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, Legends and
Uh,
Lattes. People
yeah, exactly
love
what I'm
that.
thinking about is
Yep.
exactly what I'm thinking about. And it's just one
Yeah.
of those I never heard of this subgenre until all of a sudden that term, especially because of that book, started coming around and I was just like, huh, it makes sense when I think about it, but
Yep.
never have.
Well, and that often, I mean, and especially now as, the internets and all the things are getting so good at helping you discover more things that you're going to like. And
Hmm.
so a lot of times that that perfect word, that perfect phrase, that perfect category isn't out there. And then there's a book like Legends and Lattes that just crushes it and just does great. And somebody says, "Oh my God, that was just like there's like a cozy fantasy." Boom. Like
Yeah.
it happens like that, and now all of a sudden that's a thing. And then you have a lot of authors that are going to respond to that and go, "Oh my God, I have a story that I've been trying to figure out how to categorize it or what to call it, and it's that. It's a cozy fantasy." And I think that cozies, whether it's fantasies or, gosh, I just met a woman. I'm at a indie author conference this week. She's doing cozy gas lamp thrillers. And the whole idea of like cozy whatever is that it's been a crazy few years. It has been
Hmm.
super stressful for so many people and still is.
Hmm.
And just those really feel good stories that are still satisfying, still in a genre you enjoy, but like you know that like it's going to be like wrapping up with your favorite blanket and having a cup of tea. I think are really really popular right now.
See, and that's why I have yet to read Legends and Lattes. It is on my wish list. It's on my, to read list. So it will get to it soon. But it is one that, like, I just, even the category makes me feel good.
I know, right? Like, aw, everything's better now. Like, I met a woman that she's writing a cozy post-apocalyptic. So usually when you hear post-apocalypse, you're
Yeah.
thinking, radioactive wasteland with like, roving
Hmm.
bands of marauders and mutants and things. And she's like, no, like the apocalypse is a long time ago, and the
Oh,
Earth has had time to heal. And because the Earth has had time to heal and the population was, dramatically reduced, everybody has plenty. Like they really don't want for anything.
Oh,
And so cozy post-apocalyptic is, yeah, there was an apocalypse, but yeah, give it some time and everything's great again. Like it's very bucolic and like, the earth has restored itself. And as she was describing her world, I'm like, I feel better. Like
I feel better. I
that just
love it.
gave me hope. Like not for me or even for my great 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 grandkids, but like eventually we're gonna be
Eventually.
fine. It's gonna be great. So
I like that. I really do. And again, I'm continuously learning, kind of like what you were mentioning, all these little terms and new ways to talk about books because I had
yeah.
one book series that I thought was just so off the wall. I had no idea how to pitch it outside of young adult epic fantasy, but that's so broad. But then, talking to all these other authors here, I realized it's categorized as a noble bright. So one of these sweeping,
Oh,
you know, things
yeah.
that isn't really royalty for it. It's portal fantasy, so there's little sci-fi undertones. It's
Cool.
high stakes fantasy. All these kind of terms that I had not heard before, and I'm just like, oh, okay, thank
Thank
you,
you. Yeah. Well, I
thank
mean,
you for helping me find my people for that series.
but if you think about it, for I mean, literally hundreds of years, a very very small number of mostly men decided what would be fiction, what would be allowable, what would be out there. And it takes people like Mary Shelley writing Frankenstein to all of a sudden create that. Like it's always been there. It's always been in the collective consciousness, but nobody knew how to articulate it or what to call it. And then all of a sudden you have that new thing, and now I just feel like we're in a golden age for that. With the idea of metadata and tagging and categories, and just again helping people really find what they like, and not have to swim through this ocean of things that might kind of be what they're looking for to find that special book. It's getting much, much easier to really just find that next book that odds are pretty good you're going to enjoy.
Hmm. Well, I think also one of the things that attributed to that, or the big boom of variety, and as you were saying, all these kind of meta tags, is the fact that all of a sudden people are allowed to self-publish their own work and they don't have to
Yeah.
funnel through the big
Yes.
five, which there's pros and cons for everything. I will admit,
Yep.
full for right here, but I'm an indie author, and the fact that my books wouldn't hit the mainstream for whatever reason. There's
Hmm?
trends, there's size, parameters. There are all these different things that my books might not necessarily hit those markers, but that doesn't mean I can't find readers who would absolutely love them. It's just, being able to self-publish allows a new type of book to
Yes.
be out there and then opens up for new categories and subcategories. I can't remember. Are you self-published? Are
Yeah.
you hybrid or?
No, I mean I've got a couple of short stories published in anthologies, but I'm indie author, and like we're talking like that. I, I I should probably be getting some kickback from this guy. The book that I always talk about that made me believe that success was possible, and success, however you want to define it, but just the idea of people are going to read what I wrote, was when I discovered a book called Amish Vampires in Space. and
Fantastic.
and it is, and it people loved it. It has so many reviews on Amazon and Goodreads. Like it's great.
I have to look this one up. I
I
do not know
know.
this one.
And it's just like, okay, so some dude just wrote Amish Vampires in Space and he's crushing it. Like, I think I can make this work. I totally think I can make this work. So,
I really haven't heard that one. I'll have to look that one up. I love interesting names. Also, learning how to title your work is like
yeah.
can make or break. But that is fantastic.
So, if I get to ask more questions, one thing
Oh
I've
yeah.
really been enjoying from you is when you do your featured monsters on Facebook, where you talk
Oh
about a monster or a creature from different lores and mythologies. What did you study in college? Like, oh my gosh, you are finding the coolest stuff. Like, were you a like ancient literary history major, or were you an anthropology student, or were you like
oh
big into
my goodness.
archaeology? Like, where did this come from?
No, you want to guess? No, in college I double majored in animal psychology
Okay.
because I wanted to be Dr. Dolittle and talk to the animals. I still do. It will probably just take a few more years. And then I studied fine art again for the painting side of things.
Okay.
The writing is something I always did and knew I was going to get back to. It just, for whatever reason, my mind was like, I don't need to study that. I can practice it. I can, but I was wanting to learn how to talk to animals and I wanted to learn how to get better at art. And for whatever reason, never pursued the writing. But that's probably good. Triple major sounds a little intimidating.
That's daunting. Yeah.
But as for, the mythos, again, I love mythology. So my bookshelves up until recently are heavily, all that, as I said, the source material for most mythos from worldwide, and I have a plethora of encyclopedias and anthologies on mythology and
Cool.
mythological creatures. So I have already those references and I've read most of them all the way through, always collecting more. But then there's the fantastic thing called Google.
Oh, the Googles.
The
Yeah.
Google. So if I'm ever like, okay, I'm focusing too much on maybe the obvious, the Greco-Roman or something, or Egyptian or something that maybe people know a little bit more. I'm like, I'll start thinking like, what culture doesn't get, the centerfold? So,
Sure.
and I'll kind
Yeah.
of Google and be like, do they have their own mythology? What are their lore? What is their stuff? What kind of creatures? And starting to kind of go down this little rabbit hole of what I'm going to find. And then I just grab one. I'm like, oh, this sounds so neat.
So, and I guess I totally get that. I mean, the things that you're finding and discovering and talking about are awesome. Like that's why I'm like, do you have like a degree in this stuff? Like, this is
I
phenomenal.
wish, actually,
Um,
again, if I ever went back, I would love. I don't know what. I'm
you'd
sure
be a
someone somewhere has a
cryptozoologist.
degree on mythological creatures.
Yeah.
That yes, I would love that.
So during the pandemic, I had a little side project with my friend Harold. He's a local artist. We met doing
Hmm.
cons, and I pitched this idea of an A to Z book with a monster for each letter of the alphabet.
I love it.
And I wrote these little Edward Gorey, Dr. Seuss-esque poems for each
Oh my God.
monster and why it sucks. And then Harold, drew the illustrations, and we packaged it as a coloring book. But so you're talking about the Googles. It was really fun to like just start spelunking through different countries and cultures and their mythologies, and coming across some of the just absolutely bonkers creatures that are out there.
Mhm.
I don't know. I personally, and again, I am not an authority on this at all, but I'm going to hazard that I think Japanese mythology has some of the strangest. Like, I actually found a demon which consists of a horse leg hanging from a tree that kicks people as they walk by.
I
And
don't
it's
know if I came across that one yet, but Japanese mythology and some of the lore that comes out of some of those belief systems are pretty
awesome.
out
Totally
there.
awesome.
Yes, awesome as well. But yeah, that helps because again, with my multiverse, that I am able, and it was one of the things I wanted to do was there are 12 magical worlds, but then there's multiple dimensions on each world. So pretty much I can base each world off a different mythology. And so it's fun because there's one that's a little more Chinese, and then a dual alternate reality for that same world is Japanese and Korean and stuff like that. But they
Cool.
have like their mythos, and so I'm able to. And it also gives me a reason to go and explore different mythologies, folklore,
Yeah. And it is. It's
legends, and
fun.
stuff like that.
I don't know. I think for me, like the love of all that started when I was a kid. I had an aunt and uncle that had the coffee table book of gnomes that was
Oh,
super popular in like the 70s. These just beautifully illustrated
is
gnomes.
this the Froud's
Probably,
illustrators?
maybe. I
Okay.
couldn't even tell you. I'd have to Google it. But like I think that just that experience of like as a little kid in this ginormous, beautiful book on the coffee table and like leafing through it. And it's like you said, it's like an encyclopedia of magic. It's so wonderful that I guess is probably what sort of first hooked me on all things supernatural and paranormal and weird.
curious about which book you're referencing, but since art side and fantasy side, one of my favorite illustrators who has come out with so many books is Brian Froud, and his wife's first name is escaping me, but they work together, and he was the sketch artist for a lot of stuff for the Dark Crystal.
Oh.
And his wife created the puppets for Dark Crystal and worked on that stuff.
Cool.
But just his sketches, he has bindings, and he has one of the famous ones is on fairies, but he has like one just on goblins and gnomes and all these kind of things. And so I have a whole collection of his books, and they're predominantly illustrations, but then they have like little text about the creatures and how they live, and it's just so beautiful and fun. And
I'm going to look up Brian's stuff. I'm going to see if it's the book I'm thinking of. If it is, high five. If it's not, if I find the book, I will send you the link so you can check it out.
Let me know, because I don't recognize one on gnomes, but yeah, curious now.
Yeah, and as you can see, like I'm aspiring to gnomedom. Like I'm trying to become a gnome in all things. So yeah.
Well, they're very popular now. I mean, I went from knowing a few people who like gnomes to every store on all seasons has a gnome. I have some neighbors, and that's their thing, is they change out their front stoop gnomes. I feel weekly. It's not exactly that much, but they have one for all occasions, and
nice.
they're very popular little folklore creatures that are cropping up there. And yes, as Scandinavian by descent, I'm like, you're welcome. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like they come from Scandinavia, if I remember correctly. But again, not gnome forward. I need to research more about gnomes to claim that one. I do have a gnome character, but his lineage is based on more fae than probably the actual lore.
Right.
So
cool. Nice.
Yeah. So, okay. So let me ask you, with your books, you're now writing your Shifter novel.
Yes. Yep.
Correct.
It's called The Misadventures of a Paranormal Post-Relationship Personal Effects Repossession Specialist.
That's so fantastic. I'm never going to be able to repeat that without reading it, but that is fantastic. Is this supposed to be a beginning of a series itself, or is this going to be a standalone spinoff?
No, it's so the first two books are already out. I put out An Oracle Walks Into a Bar September of 21, and then I released A Scarecrow Wins an Award in July of this year. Third book is most likely going to be called A Siren Sings Her Heart Out, coming out in January, February. But it's, I don't know how many books. I'm kind of thinking maybe 13.
Okay.
I'm kind of trying to take a little bit of Jim Butcher's, Dresden File sauce and put it into the series. So I'm going to try and draw this one out for a while.
That's fine. I was like, if you have something good, go with it. Because, I mean, once you develop your world building, I mean, use it. Use it. Because
exactly.
that was my thing. It was my first series. It was 4 books. And it was so hard to say goodbye and, like, end the series. But then I wanted to do some slightly longer ones. So the Jet Chronicles, it's probably going to be around 9-ish. And then the Guardian Speaker will be 16. But those are novellas. So it's not as intense as you think.
But it is. That's still, I mean, so figure your novellas are probably, like 30,000 words, 40,000 words?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, you put two of those together, you've got a typical urban fantasy length book. So it's like 8 books. That's a lot.
Well, it sounds like also that you're picking up speed with writing, because it sounds like you're releasing one, 2 a year now?
Yeah, I'm trying to sustain 2 a year. And then going into the 2023, I would like to be able to get 2 books out for the current series and also start working on a new series alongside of it. So still releasing 2 books a year, but hopefully producing 3 books a year if I can find the time. It's just...
That is always the trick.
So I'm, I don't know if I mentioned this, I'm at the 20 Books to 50K Indie Author Conference in Vegas this week.
Okay. That's fantastic. I know a number of authors now from this platform, they're all there. So I
Yeah.
hope
Oh,
you
it's
guys are
great.
having a fantastic time.
It's off to a great start. It kicked off yesterday with just kind of like opening registration stuff. Today
Hmm.
was some programming, but one of the women that's teaching the classes and the workshops and stuff, 245 books. I know.
Rapid release.
I, and even if you're like, okay, cool, like, so let's just assume that she's doing like around 50,000 words, like maybe like just cracking that novel length threshold, like it's a little bit more than a novella, really short novel. Still, 245 times 50,000. That's math. Those, how many words is that? That this person has written in a meaningful way in their adult life. Like they didn't start writing when they were 3. Like this is, oh my god. So yeah, I'm never going to be that. That's yeah, 2 maybe 3
Never
books a
say
year.
never. You could surprise yourself,
I mean,
but
like, not
never
without
say
like,
never.
if there's like cybernetic enhancements that just like plug into your ear and a book comes out 3 days later, like then sure I could maybe knock out that many books, but not with current technology and my brain. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, my thing is like I've been trying to put out for the novellas, and the idea was one full length um a year. Got behind this year, but I have some reasons why I kind of postponed my full length release. But with that said, I mean it's one of those things. Once you start developing a rhythm, it kind of helps,
Yeah,
and you get faster at it. I do think you get faster at it.
you
You
do.
know what works for you. You get in your writing rhythm. It's easier once you have a structure of your world. It helps set the
Yep,
frame for the next one. So you could be probably surprised at how quickly
it's
you
true.
can turn out books compared to what you used to. But each person's different.
So
And
on the plotter to pantser scale, where do you sit?
I am that probably probably more on the plotting side, but I do
Okay,
fall in the in between.
sure.
But it's because just the way my brain works. When I come up with an idea, I already kind of have from the get go know how many books, the big points, the main
Okay,
characters, the main plots. Yet as I start working, a lot of these subplots come out and new characters come, and all that kind of stuff is after I start, allowing the story to kind
sure.
of
Yep.
uh, breathe. But I do kind of fall in between where I do have my framework pretty much set up and know where I'm headed.
Cool.
Though sometimes I take a little longer route to get there, but at least I know where I'm ending up.
Yep. No, I think that I try and follow the same. The characters and stories are squirrely as hell. Like 35,000 words into my new book, and just finally pulled up my actual plot outline to figure out like where exactly did I get so completely off course from what I had thought was going to happen, and it was like
Hmm.
10,000 words in. Like
Wow.
I somehow like found an off ramp of the highway I planned to drive on, and then just kept going for another 25,000 words. So yeah,
That's fine. Sometimes that makes the most entertaining storyline. You
yeah,
just have to let your story, you know, lead you on wherever it feels
yep,
right. I had someone chime in says, "I wish my brain allowed me to create in such an intense way." I mean, I think everybody's brains work differently, so
hmm
you just have to find out what works for you. Like for me, my I started out writing these giant meaty, well, comparatively giant meaty books, and so my full lengths are they're a little girthy,
okay,
word count wise, compared to what most, I guess, the average is. And so that's one of the reasons why I challenged myself to see if I could write a novella, because I wanted to see, can I tell a story
oh
instead of
yeah,
this, in
yeah,
a more succinct thing. And I think now that I'm comfortable with those two sizes, what I probably will start heading toward is, that 90,000, 100,000 marker, which is good for fantasy,
sure.
depending on, you know, what age bracket. But I just tend to write bigger books. I like to talk, and my stories have end up having like so many subplots going on. I'm like, oh, I have to wrap this up. I have to wrap this up. We could go on for days.
So how do you keep track of, I mean, so I think that one thing that's really challenging for me when I think about writing epic fantasy is the worlds, the characters, and all the plot lines. Like, I, Game of Thrones, perfect example. Too big, too big for my brain. I mean, I can handle writing about three guys in Wisconsin on a bowling team. I can follow those guys and keep things straight. So how do you keep track of all the things that are happening in these big, expansive worlds, like your 12 magical world universe? Like, do you just have like Google spreadsheets galore and like post-it notes everywhere? And is there
I
like
do have some
thumbtacks and
interesting
yarn and
diagrams that I use as a reference, also because I have to know like which ones are close to what other ones for the length of time they travel between. And but even though I have a very complex multiverse building, I chose to, at least so far, follow only one main character's point of view.
okay,
And so that helps me,
sure,
versus
yep,
Martin and Game of Thrones, where you're trying to follow and jumping between. And
right,
there is some of that who knows what questions that come along, but I feel like just following one point of view helps minimize some of that
sure,
particular type of complexity. Though, by all means, yes, having multiple worlds and everything, that does add its own complexity in and among itself too. So it's a combination of I just have to focus on what does my character know at this moment, and am aware of what other characters know that she might not know, and have to decide how she's going to figure that stuff out, or does she figure that stuff out. But I don't know, it just works for me. But I do have some interesting diagrams, and depending on what story I'm writing, my desk is pushed against a wall, so I kind of started with sticky notes and taped up images and diagrams, and it looks a little concerning probably to
yep,
some people.
totally, yeah, like it totally makes sense. It's amazing. Yeah, I can see it. So
Yeah. So
I
how
mean,
do you
well, I
you write in
don't.
public, which I cannot do. I need my space. I need, when I'm writing new material, I want to be in my quiet zone because
Okay.
I am concentrating on my work, pretty intensely. But a lot of writers, kind of like you, like to write in public areas. How do you not get
Well,
distracted?
like for me, so if it's too quiet, I'm going stir crazy. And then when it's too quiet and there is a noise, like my brain can't block it out. Like I instantly lose what I was thinking about and just focus on whatever that thing was. So, if I'm trying to write at home and a truck drives by and hits a pothole, like just the sound of the truck bouncing over the pothole by itself just rips me out of my head and it takes forever to get back. So when I go out, it just becomes white noise. Uh, all the din, all the conversations, all the music and everything just becomes white noise and actually helps me focus.
Okay.
And then it's nice to be able to step back from the writing for a minute and just look around and just see the life and hear snippets of conversation and like just watch the humanity go by. So yeah, it's really hard for me to write anywhere other than like a public, fairly crowded place. But in terms of keeping track of my worlds, I suck. Like I finally started a series Bible spreadsheet for my new series, like just to try and keep track of things like how many Pams do I have in my books? Because like if I've already used the name Pam, I probably shouldn't use the name Pam again because that's going to confuse somebody. So I have all these tabs of like names, places, and then like stuff, and it is ad hoc AF. I am super disorganized, so I compensate by trying to just write nice small little stories, but it's getting hard. I'm writing a bigger and bigger world, and
Mm-hmm.
already trying to figure out like how do I keep all of this connected. I have no idea. There's going to be a
Yep.
lot of
How do you keep
yarn,
your
thumbtacks.
rules?
Yeah.
Yep. Keep the eye colors of your characters that you wrote 4 books ago.
Oh, it's so true because it's so
Why
easy
is
to
that one
forget.
so hard to do? I feel like every time, because I keep a I keep kind of a spreadsheet and trying to keep, the big things, the hair color, eye color, descriptors, personality quirks. Still, things like eye color will occasionally slip by me, and I'm like, wait, did I log this in? Did I never mention it? Or did I mention it? And I'm going to change the eye color for no reason outside the fact that I have human error. Author error.
Yep. Oh, I just released a short story in the world of my trilogy, and it's kind of the origin story of one of the main characters, a woman named Lois. And in the book, like middle of book 2, she makes a brief reference to her Aunt Helga that lived in this small town in Wisconsin. So I had written this short story about her grandma, Helga, and was like, like finger on the publish button when finally my brain kicked in and was like, wait a second. Was she actually a grandma, or did you say it was her aunt? And yeah. So yeah, I need to start writing this stuff down and keeping better track because
And that is something that a style sheet, I know that it's called by that name, at least by a few. But yeah, to keep one is kind of one of those things that it helps.
it
And
helps.
I've been really trying with my series since I am releasing 2 simultaneously. The problem also is both style sheets are completely different in how I formatted them
Oh
for
God.
whatever reason. And I know, God bless to all those who helped me through the editing process, because if they're bouncing back and forth, they're like, wait, why is this
Gah.
group here? Why did you structure? Why didn't you format that? It's my way my brain's working for this project. Oh man. So did you freeze, or are you very still? Did I lose you? I may have lost him temporarily or scared him away. There you go. Are you still there? I can't tell. Okay, okay. I think our
I am
service
still here.
is a
What?
little
No,
glitchy
come
right
on.
now. Hello, hello.
Boo. I'm sorry. Hello, hello.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
he's
I
still
hear
here.
you.
This is so
I hear
sad.
you. Your visuals kind of catching touch and go, but we are hitting the
Okay.
end of the hour, so that's actually okay. I do have a question for you since you're at the 20 books for 50K um conference, which is sounds so
Yeah.
fantastic. I would love to attend it maybe next year, maybe the year after. I have to decide when it fits, when it works, but is this your first time attending this conference?
Yes, it's my first time. I only recently joined the book or the group on Facebook maybe
Mhm.
6 or 9 months ago. So yeah, first time here
Mhm.
and recommended. I would definitely say for any any existing authors anywhere in your journey, the Facebook group 20 Books to 50K is entirely focused on the business side of being an author and supporting one another as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as creatives. It's great. It's just it's a treasure trove of good knowledge and guidance and wisdom and stuff. And this conference is just like a little tiny gift wrapped piece of that. Like you get a chance to actually hear from folks that are really doing things right. And there's no right way. So it's really cool to hear like, what worked for Kevin or what worked for, Susan or whatever. And then just meet a ton of great people. So yeah, it's been a really fun event so far. I'm looking forward to the rest of the week.
Oh, that's so exciting. Well, I want to follow up with you after the week and hear how it all goes, because it is something that every time for the past couple years that I've heard about this event, in a number of years, I've always wondered, is it worth it? Because, it's always like the time, the money, the effort, the energy, and scheduling and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I've only heard good things, but I've never actually been able to talk to someone who's
Oh,
been
well,
there.
I will give you the inside scoop. I will dish on this event like nobody's business. So good, the bad, and the ugly.
Perfect. I love it. I love it. So, one of my favorite things to ask as we're rounding the end of the hour is, is there anything that you would want to tell a potential new reader about yourself, about your work that we haven't already covered? Anything that you want to make sure a
Oh,
topic or question or you want to make sure we hit upon, touch upon, something?
only that, I mean, people read different things for different reasons. And
Mm-hmm.
so, if somebody's picking up my books, I hope that they are just in, in search of and find just a fun, very human story, even though it's full of monsters and strange creatures. Something that you can enjoy, kind of step out of the daily humdrum or whatever's stressing you out. Yeah, I would think that if you just want to take a little break from reality and have a couple of giggles, definitely check out my books.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for, making the time, especially in your busy, very busy week, to come out and chit chat with me. And if you want to ever do this again, I do this weekly, and you can just touch base and hopefully we can do this again. I may be losing you again. That's okay.
Oh no.
No, hey, it's a perfect timing. It works well. It's fine. But I will definitely reach out to you after this and talk to you some more about a few different things. And for everybody who has been joining in today, thank you. If you have any questions for us,
Well,
make
if you
sure
can hear
you
me,
friend. It's okay. It's okay. We're breaking up, but it's right at the end of the end of the day. So that worked out perfectly. For all those who were here, thank you. And I will catch up with you again soon after your event.
cool. Thanks, Catherine. Thanks, everyone, for
Bye.
watching. We'll catch you later. Bye.